888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Is Bruno Mars a cultural appropriator? A black activist says that he's stealing music from black people. What's that? Over 300,000 jobs last month, shattering expectations. Trump calls Maxine Waters a, quote, low IQ individual, therefore insulting all of the low IQ individuals in the audience. Why are people like Jake Tapper finally asking 7 Democrats who are close to Farrakhan to renounce him? What about the entire party's ties to another blatant race card hustling anti-Semite named Al Sharpton? Trump haters can't figure out whether to praise or condemn Trump's agreeing to meet with Kim Jong-un. But first, Stormy Daniels? Really? Honestly? Here's what the Wall Street Journal said.
Several things have fueled it. One is the introduction of complaints to the Federal Election Commission and, the possibility of an investigation. And another thing is the fact that there's been a little bit of stonewalling. The White House has tried to kind of push this off onto Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's lawyer.
Right.
And so, the more they haven't answered questions, we still don't know whether Cohen was reimbursed, then it has continued to linger.
Was he reimbursed or not? Was the president aware of it or not? Here's what the Washington Post said.
To him the way that Bob Corker has.
Michael, I want to ask you, you just wrote an in-depth piece about sort of the struggle within, or as you see it, the search for the soul of the evangelical movement in many ways. You say they've lost their interest in decency. What do you
Republicans, because of Stormy Daniels and their defense of Donald Trump, they've lost their respect for decency. And check out this CNN panel blowing up after Scaramucci insists that President Trump is, in fact, presidential. Listen to this.
Let's do this real quick, because one thing he is selling is himself. And he talked about this last night, that he's kind of throwing being presidential out the window. Here's what he said.
He was joking, Chief.
Remember I used to tell how easy it is to be presidential? But you'd all be out of here right now.
These guys need to take the poll out, honestly. He was joking.
You'd be so bored. That's much easier than doing what I have to do. But this is much more effective. Don't forget, this got us elected. If I came like a stiff, you guys wouldn't be here tonight.
Anthony, I have to ask you this. There are children standing behind the President of the United States.
There are children standing behind the President of the United States. And here he is saying he's not going to be presidential. That means when they grow up, they're going to act non-presidential too.
And the president is saying, I don't have to be presidential.
Really?
What kind of example does that set?
Really?
Well, I mean, that's because this is the mistake everybody's making about him. Okay, he's obviously very presidential, but he's also...
Wait, in what way?
What are you talking about? I mean, this guy...
And there's a Democratic strategist named Sellers. Listen to this.
If Barack Obama
We're taking the bait again.
If Barack Obama paid off a porn star $130,000, if he cheated on 3 wives, I mean, listen, the list goes on and on. If he had a handful of advisors that were either indicted or pled guilty, then there would be pitchforks in front of the White House.
Oh, okay. Calm down, people on the left. Calm down. Your double standard and your selective outrage and your hypocrisy are showing. What's presidential about paying off a porn star? Is that what he said?
Presidential is not something that's associated with Donald Trump. So if
Corey,
this is a good segue.
Calm down. Let's talk presidential, okay? I just saw a Gallup poll asking Republicans and Democrats to cite their most favorite presidents, and routinely the Democrats put Bill Clinton and Jack Kennedy at the top. Routinely. Have my baby brown libertarian fingers a Gallup poll, same thing. Democrats were asked to rate their favorite president. Bill Clinton right at the top, followed very closely by JFK. Now, this is after the revelations of their sexual behavior, in some cases, their sexual misconduct, in some cases, allegations of rape. Democratic icon JFK partied with hookers at the White House, shared a mistress with a mobster, was a serial cheater on Jackie. There's a book written by Seymour Hersh, who used to be a reporter for the New York Times, so therefore you know he must be credible, called The Dark Side of Camelot. It was reviewed in the Chicago Tribune by a longtime, very respected Chicago Tribune columnist named Joan Beck, who also later on became, I think, the first woman to serve on the editorial board at the Chicago Tribune, but I'll check that. Won a number of awards, very, very well respected. Here's what she wrote in her review of Dark Side of Camelot, which is about JFK. May I quote? Thank you. Many of the charges in The Dark Side of Camelot are now familiar. Joseph Kennedy stole the 1960 election for his son. JFK used the Secret Service to sneak women into the White House when Jackie was away. Some of Hersh's accusations are less familiar. Kennedy suffered from venereal disease for 30 years, apparently infecting and being reinfected by the prostitutes and the starlets he used to satisfy his insatiable appetite. And it goes on and on and on. Again, this book was published in 1997. Since then, there have been many, many other incidents, other stories corroborating what Seymour Hersh said. It has not affected how the Democrats perceive him. Bobby Kennedy, serial cheater on his wife Ethel. His good friend Richard Goodwin was quoted on the record as saying, well, it's a Kennedy tradition to sleep around, but Bobby was a little more guarded about it and less reckless than his brother. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. When Ted Kennedy retired from died with his boots on, meaning still as a member of the Senate, what was he called? The Lion of the Senate, the conscience of the Senate. This is from an article, 1990, when he was still in the Senate, of course, by Michael Kelly, called A Sober Look at Ted Kennedy. Quote, a former mid-level Kennedy staffer, bitterly disillusioned, recalls with disgust how an ex-ranking aide served as a pimp whose real position was to procure women for Kennedy. The fellow did not have a legitimate job, she says, but also openly bragged of his prowess at getting attractive and bettable dates for his boss. The former staffer also recalls attending a party at Kennedy's McLean, Virginia mansion and finding it sleazy and weird to see that Senator had apparently established as his live-in girl a young woman known to the staff as the T-shirt girl, a New Englander who had previously sold T-shirts at a beach resort and who had apparently met the senator through his son, Teddy Jr. I'm skipping around. In December 85, just before he announced he'd run for president, Kennedy allegedly manhandled a pretty young woman employed as a waitress. The woman, mentions her name, declined to be quoted in the article, but says the following account is accurate. It is after midnight, and Kennedy and Senator Dodd from Connecticut are finishing up a long dinner in a private room on the first floor of the restaurant's annex. They are drunk. Their dates, two very young blondes, leave the table to go to the bathroom. The dates are drunk, too. The girls always got very, very drunk, says a former waitress at the bar. As another waitress enters the room, the 6'2", 225-pound plus Kennedy grabs the 5'3", 103-pound waitress and throws her on the table. She lands on her back, scattering crystal plates and cutlery and the lit candles. Several glasses and a crystal candlestick are broken. Kennedy then picks her up from the table, throws her on Dodd, who is sprawled on a chair. With her on Dodd's lap, Kennedy jumps on top of her and begins rubbing his genital area against hers, supporting his weight. And I can go on and on and on, but I'm not going to. What's presidential about that? This is the guy that ran for president, was saluted, was hailed when he died as the Lion of the Senate and sometimes the conscience of the Senate. Has this altered their respect for him? And don't get me started on Bill Clinton. From that book that I've told you about, written by Christopher Hitchens, a very well-respected lefty, and the foreword written by Douglas Brinkley, a very respected historian, he says that Bill Clinton was plausibly, his word, not mine, accused of rape 3 times. And to my knowledge, Sam Donaldson remains the only national reporter to ever ask Bill Clinton about the allegation of rape made by Juanita Broaddrick. And if anybody asked Hillary about the allegation made by Broaddrick that she verbally intimidated her 2 weeks after the alleged rape, I haven't heard it. But you want to talk about Stormy Daniels? Something that happened 10 years ago? Are you kidding me? Are you smoking something? Unbelievable. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Can you smell the hypocrisy? Don't leave town.
Larry Elder.
We're talking about the hyperventilation over the revelation that Donald Trump may have had a relationship 10 years ago with a porn star and may have paid her off several days before the election so that she doesn't say anything. Is there an allegation that he used campaign funds? Well, people on the left are suggesting that. I've not heard anything at all that suggests that campaign funds were used. Any laws were broken. I've not heard anything at all. What this is about, of course, is bringing down Donald Trump. Because if they truly cared about things like this, they wouldn't be talking about a consensual relationship that took place 10 years before he became president. They'd be talking about, for example, the book that came out while Bill Clinton was in office, written by Christopher Hitchens. And again, the book had great credibility because Hitchens was considered to be a bright lefty. He died of cancer. He wrote for a long time for Nation magazine, a very respected left-wing magazine, part owner, Paul Newman. Give you some idea of how many people on the left respect the Nation magazine, which is still going on. He wrote a book called No One Left to Lie To. And in it, he said that Bill Clinton was plausibly accused of rape not once, not twice, but 3 times. He didn't give any further details. But wouldn't you think that somebody over at the Washington Post or the New York Times would pick it up and go, wow, and give Hitchens a call and maybe track this down? Because after all, he was still in office. What's presidential about paying off a porn star? What's presidential about rape? Mr. Sellers. If you really cared about this, you would have asked Hillary about the allegation, the very serious allegation made by an alleged rape survivor that Hillary made it clear to her that she must keep her mouth shut. And it wasn't just made on some tabloid. That allegation was made on Dateline NBC by Juanita Broaddus. Anybody care? I asked Gloria Allred, who's a big Hillary supporter, about the allegations made by Juanita Broaddus, about the allegations made against Hillary's husband, and about whether or not Hillary was complicit in enabling it or looking it the other way or indeed encouraging its behavior. And Gloria Allred wouldn't even talk about it, change the subject, did it over and over again. The hypocrisy on the left is just stunning, isn't it? About the reverence for Bill Clinton and for JFK, here's what Frank Newport of Gallup said, and I'm quoting, "Americans clearly evaluate presidents through partisan lenses, no kidding. With Democrats and Republicans each most likely to choose a greatest president within their own party. Republicans name Reagan substantially more than anybody else, followed by Washington, Lincoln, Kennedy, and then George W. Bush. Democrats are most likely to say that Clinton was the greatest U.S. president, followed by Kennedy." Now, the revelations of Kennedy's behavior and of Clinton's behavior, Clinton's apparent continued behavior, because during the campaign there were allegations that his rantiness still had not been restrained. If the revelations of JFK from books like Dark Side of Camelot have affected the way the left perceives John Kennedy, you can't tell it by these polls. So will you please knock it off? It's obvious what you're doing. The double standard ought to shame you, really. Bill Maher slammed the liberals who are against a proposed Kim Jong-un meeting.
I was watching all the cable news last night, and so all these liberals who are reflexively hating on this, Obama, remember him? Proposed the exact same thing in 2008, and they loved it. And B, you don't live on the West Coast, where a nuke can get here faster than an Uber from North Korea. I mean, what is this? No president has ever done this. Yeah, and they all failed. So I'm going to file this one under so crazy it just might work.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the reaction by the media and by the left to this proposed meeting in May between the president and the dictator from North Korea. I thought the president's bellicose, militaristic attitude was going to blow up the world. And now the dictator has said he wants to denuclearize, or at least apparently he told the South Koreans he does. Say it ain't so. I'm Larry Elder.